who actually run the electrical grid, issuing stark warnings. For 100 years, America's electrical system, mostly stable, with blackouts being the rare exception. But when they do happen, they can have exceptional consequences.
The situation here in Brownsville was described as anarchy, war, rioting.
Every source of power that the state of Texas has been compromised.
Now a new combination of the latest artificial intelligence data centers
and
power plants is creating a perfect storm, from the big city to the Great Plains.
Becoming more of a challenge across the whole eastern part of the United States.
Rich Dewey oversees NISO, which runs the grid in New York.
Rich, you say the grid is at an inflection point. What does that mean?
Really, it's a confluence of a number of different factors. So we're on the cusp of really new technologies coming onto the grid, and it's really got us concerned about our
data centers
reliability for not only for New York City, but for the state as a whole.
Dewey says on a peak day, the demand is 32 to 33,000 megawatts. Now they have proposals for 13,000 more megawatts in demand for AI alone, a nearly 50% increase.
At a time of significant load growth, we're actually retiring more generation that we're building, and that gives us some concerns.
Not enough power. About half of the country through the Eastern Interconnection, and Dewey says everyone is talking about the problem.
What we're seeing is the story in New York is a very similar story across all the other regions.
Another grid operator called PJM handles power in 13 states and DC. They say they've got the same problems. They're letting new data centers connect only if they bring their own power plants online too, or they have to agree
as it should have been from the beginning.
The grid gets stressed. It's becoming a political hot topic with protests against new data centers.
Okay, so let's have a conversation. Data centers require a lot of energy and water, and they're being allowed to enter into these states without providing their own power generation source. So they tap into the grid, which we're already tapped into, and now we have to pay the cost for the data centers because the data centers don't have their own independent power generation sources. You see where we going with this? So now the costs are passed on to us, the everyday working people, who may not even, just be plugged into AI at all as of yet. Most people are, but that's not the point. The data centers themselves should supply their own independent power generation sources and not have those costs passed on to the everyday consumer, because the everyday working class people can't afford it. It's just too much. It's entirely too much. You know what I mean? So this is the conversation that needs to be had in my state. There's some bills in the state legislature that attempt to address this issue, because it is an issue, because again, the costs to run the data centers are being passed on to consumers who are already stressed and strained. You know what I mean? There's just too much going on. This country has become insolvent, meaning that it cannot pay its bills. It has $6 trillion in assets and over $38 trillion in debt. Yeah, that's a problem. And now we have the cost of data centers being passed on to consumers of utility companies, the everyday working class people again. These are issues. People need to talk about these things. They need to get out. You need to speak to your state reps. You need to speak to your local politicians in your communities. You need to find out how you can get some cost relief to your particular utility bills. Because all these things can happen for you. You just got to stay informed. So I'm just putting some information out. These data centers are eating up all of the electricity, all of the power, all of the water, and those costs are being passed on us. So I'm here to do something about it. What are you going to do? Principal Resilience TV, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get it. Let's go. Peace.